Hey, what's up guys? I'm Tony Camponovo and this is Inside My Brain. Today I'm starting a 3-part series entitled The Beauty of Wide Intervals. This is episode 1 of 3 episodes, and today we're going to talk about pentatonic scales. I decided to start this series using pentatonic scales because, first of all guitar players, pretty much if you've been playing for any amount of time, that's one of the first things we learn is that pentatonic box, and it's familiar to us, and it's also familiar to listeners, even those that aren't necessarily music experts. The ear gravitates to a pentatonic scale. It's a great scale for a lot of things. So first I'm going to start with this simple E minor pentatonic scale that we all know and love. Nothing new there probably. That's a simple box that we all know. So I'm playing that scale straight up the scale and back down. The order it would go. First thing I want to do is put some space between these, because to me, the wider the interval in your melody lines when you're soloing or improvising, the more interesting it tends to sound. And even if you take something that sounds familiar and spread those intervals out more, it gives it a more unique quality. I remember hearing guys do stuff like this when I was at UNT, or just other guitar players that I like. You hear a pentatonic based line, but maybe the intervals are spread out more. And so you think to yourself, I recognize that, but it doesn't sound like when I play it. This is a way to kind of achieve that sort of sound. So first thing I'm going to do is skip every other note that I would have been playing in the scale. So for instance, instead of going straight from E to G, I'm going to skip that G and go from E to A. So that gives us a perfect fourth interval. That's already cool. Anytime you're moving up in fourths, that's just a more modern, hip sound, in my opinion. So we'll play E to A of a perfect fourth. Then on my middle finger, I'm going to play the B. And now I'm going to go back, I'm going to go up to my D string and play D with my first finger. And now I'm going to hit G with my pinky. That's the G that we previously skipped. And now I'm going to play A, which would be the next note in the pentatonic scale anyway. And then with my first finger, I'm going to play B. So we're still kind of in this normal order here. Now I'm going to play my E. So we're not going to spend a lot of time playing the same notes twice to span the octave. And that's a really easy pattern to remember as a guitarist, because the fingering patterns are the same going up, and we're playing the 2-1-2 pattern on the string. So basically what that means is I'm playing 2 notes on a string, then 1 note on a string, then 2 notes, then 1 note, and 2 notes, etc., etc. So when you hear me say 2-1-2, that's what I'm referring to. 2-1-2-1-2. Very easy fingering to remember. We can also do the same order of notes, the exact same line coming off the 5th string. And our fingering is almost the same, but there's one little difference. So notice this. I'm going to play E again with my first finger, A with my pinky, B with my middle finger, D with my first finger, G with my pinky. Now, this time when I play A, I'm using my 3rd finger because of that difference when we get to the G string, how it kind of changes our tuning up a little bit. It just forces us to change our position up just a little bit. And then B with my first finger, and E with my pinky. That's the only difference. Okay, so that's our basic use of an E minor pentatonic scale. I also think it's important that if we're talking about, the usage of wide interval lines, how can we also use that to make it sound interesting over different harmonies? Obviously E minor, we've got that figured out. Now what happens if I move that same scale down a half step and play E flat minor pentatonic? But we're going to keep E in the bass. created a really cool major 7 sharp 11 sound, or Lydian. So that's a good trick to remember. Just a pentatonic scale down a half step is going to give you that major 7 sharp 11 sound. So that's one way to use the same lick, if you will, for a different color. We can do the same thing off of a G sharp over E, and it's also going to be a very nice E major 7 sound. You can also do the same thing off of C sharp, and it's going to make a nice E major sound. So when we're improvising, that's 3 different places that we've looked at that will all work for an E major tonality of some type. Even an E major 7 sharp 11 if we play it a half step down. So we can play all of those off of an E major 7 sharp 11. Now the same thing goes for minor scales. It's important to remember, at least inside my brain, there's always 2-3 places where the same idea will work based off of a different scale degree to get different colors from a given chord. So obviously if we play this line off of the root, we're getting a nice E minor sound. But we can also play it off of F sharp, and we can combine that with E minor, and that will get us a nice Dorian vibe, so E Dorian. We can also play it off of B, and B fits into that E minor, Dorian-ish sound too, or just E minor. So we can combine all of those to sound cool. And the truth is, you could do an A minor pentatonic in there too, and it's going to fit pretty good. Just going to highlight different notes. That time I just played E pentatonic, A pentatonic, B pentatonic, and F sharp pentatonic. All minor pentatonic shapes, all the same shape, just in different positions. And you can hear how that sits over E differently. So there's minor and major. There's also another cool trick that improvisers use that is really nothing new to the world of improvisation. And that's the idea of using a pentatonic scale a half step up over a altered or diminished sound. So what I mean by that is you'll hear guys maybe play an E minor pentatonic scale followed closely by an F minor pentatonic scale. And that alone sounds pretty cool. But when you put those wider intervals in there, it's just more interesting. It's more likely to trick the listener's ear in a good way and just really give you a hip sound in whatever lines you're playing. So that time I played E minor pentatonic, F minor pentatonic, and then I went to B minor pentatonic. You can also use a B flat minor pentatonic because we're playing like that. Like I said, it's an altered dominant or diminished sound, so you can always do a tritone away, and that's whether it's major or minor. A lot of times that's a cool way to split the octave and just make your line sound more interesting. So for example, I could do this, go up an E minor, come down a B flat minor. Or maybe vice versa, go up a B flat and come down E. And if it's diminished or altered, we can just go up a diminished pattern and play a pentatonic off of each one, and it's going to have some kind of relevance to what we're playing. Maybe play it down a minor third on C sharp, D, so that all can kind of work when you're doing something over an altered dominant. Basically, when I think of an altered dominant chord, anything goes. except a major 7. You kind of want to avoid that note. Hopefully that makes sense. So now I'm going to show you one other variance of playing a pentatonic scale with a larger interval put inside of it. I'm going to take that same E minor outline, like when I look down at the fretboard and I see this box. But this time I'm going to play 3 notes off the low string, skip a string, 3 more notes, skip a string, 3 more notes. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm playing 3 notes, E, G, A, skip a string, go up to the G string, play D, E, G, skip a string, go up to the E string and play B, D, and E, and then back down. And this is cool because whenever you're doing a 3-note per string pattern on a guitar, there's something about that just helps you build momentum for playing faster. And really, the whole point of playing guitar is to play as fast as possible, right? Cool. And I can sequence these, skip every other note, and go up that pattern. So you can see that still sounds kind of familiar, but there's something interesting about it just because there's more space. So a lot of times when people think about the traditional pentatonic boxes on a guitar, it's harder to get momentum going. But when you do like a 3-note per string pattern or a 2-1-2 pattern, it becomes very easy to get more speed up. So you can see it's a bit of a stretch for your hand, but once you kind of work past the idea that you're stretching a little bit farther than you're used to, it's really easy to get some speed going. And all the rules that I talked about earlier about where pentatonic scales will fit over a given bass note still apply because it's still a pentatonic scale. We're just kind of rearranging the notes a little bit. For instance, I can play that pattern over an E major. And you can see those different shapes can often put your fingers in position to springboard a new line that is equally melodic because it's not as predictable as when you hear traditional pentatonic boxes played. So you can also play these same things like a major third apart from each other to kind of nail an augmented sound. So basically if a G sharp minor pentatonic over E equals E major 7, you can also play a C minor pentatonic and an E minor pentatonic because those are all a major third apart, and they will nail those 3 major triads that come from an augmented scale. So you can see that the 3 of those together over some crazy augmented chords, you can mix them up and put them in there to get a cool augmented sound. So there's a couple of good ways to spread out pentatonic scales into wider intervals to get a more interesting modern sound. Those aren't the only ones, but I wanted to start with those. I feel like pentatonic is a great place to start. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back with episode 2 soon.